Hey everybody, it's Maria, and today I'm doing the What Should I Read Next tag. This tag was created by Getting Hugo with it. I saw it on That's What She Read's channel, but the questions are really from a podcast called What Should I Read Next? That is hosted by Anne Bogel, who is also known as the Modern Mrs. Darcy. She has a great blog that I've been reading for years. I've listened since the very first podcast, and it's just a really fun one, especially for readers. The premise behind the podcast is she has a different guest on each week, and she will ask you, name 3 books that you love, 1 book that you hate, and what you've been reading lately, and she will give you 3 suggestions for what you should read next. She does a really good job of kind of book therapy, narrowing down what things really speak to you as a reader, and I think that's really cool. So the idea behind this tag is to answer these questions on here, and then anybody who's watching the video can write their suggestions down below. Now, obviously my TBR is like ridiculous, and I shouldn't get more suggestions, but we all know that that's just ridiculous. You can never have too many book suggestions. So this is my plea from you guys. What would you think that I should read next? Write them in the comments, as many suggestions as you would like. Bonus points for reasons why you think they'd be a good match. And I will go ahead and get on with my answers. So the 3 books that I love is, of course, it's not like you can really narrow down to 3 books that you love. And I didn't necessarily pick my favorites of all time books for a couple reasons. Number 1, I think it's not a very good sampling of what I like to read as a reader. Also, my husband said that if I mentioned Grapes of Wrath on here again, he was going to unsubscribe. No, I don't think that's really true. But I wasn't going to test him on it. So I will talk about Grapes of Wrath at some point in the future because it's my favorite right now. But I'm not technically going to mention it on the list of books that I love for his sake because I like him and I don't want him to unsubscribe. So 3 books that I love. The first book that I love is America's Women, 400 Years of Dolls, Drudges, Helpmates, and Heroines by Gail Collins. I actually have the follow-up to this that I've not read yet, and I don't know why. This is a history of women in America, and what I like is that she covers not only the extraordinary women that you might hear about in history class, if you were lucky enough to hear about women in history class, but she talks about what it is like for everyday, ordinary women throughout our country's history, and I think that's really fun. It was done very well. It was just a really good read. I love books like this that are micro-histories, especially feminist kind of histories of books. So yes, I already know that there's a follow-up to this that I need to read. I have it on my shelf. I will get to it this summer probably. I read this last summer. So this kind of showcases that I love history, and especially women in history. I don't know. So, and the cover is just kind of fun too. I'm not very patriotic, but I like the cover. So that's the first book. The second book that I'm going to talk about is The Humans by Matt Haig, and I know I've talked about this on here before, but I don't think it gets enough play. The Humans is a book that has everything in it. There's drama, there's a little bit of romance, there's even some poetry, there's a little bit of sci-fi. The premise behind it is there is an alien race that is monitoring the kind of human situation, and a mathematics professor has come up with a very elaborate solution to something that the aliens do not think that the humans should have. And so they send someone down to inhabit him, but he also has to do some recon work. This sounds, I don't know, weirder than it is, to figure out if anybody else knows the solution. Meanwhile, the alien kind of falls in love with being a human and loves the human experience. And it's so funny. I read so much of this out loud to my kids. I want to say the first 3 chapters, maybe 2 or 3 chapters, he's naked because he doesn't understand that humans wear clothes, and he doesn't understand why everybody's interacting with him in such a hostile manner. It's just really funny. I love The Humans because I love books that talk about what it means to be a human and why being a human is great, because sometimes I forget, to be honest. This book reminded me about the wonderful, awesome things about life, even when they don't seem awesome. It made me ask questions about the human experience. It kept me on the edge of my seat, and it made me laugh. And I think you can't really ask much more from a book than that. So that is number 2. And number 3, I am going to go with, narrowing this down, I'm going to go with Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. And the reason I'm going to go with this one is because it is one of the best books on social justice and race and the prison system and just a lot of the human life experience, especially in the States. And I liked that he used his own personal story interwoven with facts and figures to back it up about why we need to adjust the justice system and why we need to do better than we're doing. And social justice books just always get me in the gut. I love them. So I'm going to go ahead and say Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. And I actually don't own a copy of that because I got it from the library and I have not seen it on half-price bookshelves yet. So those are the 3 books that I love. Now, as far as books that I hate, there aren't tons of books that I hate, but there are some candidates. I went ahead and I'm going to say that I really, really hated the book My Antonia by Willa Cather. I've read this twice. I read it once in high school and I read it once about 7 or 8 years ago for a book club. And the second time I didn't hate it quite as much, but only because I read it in a book club with other people who seemed to enjoy the book. And so I could see the reason behind some people enjoying the book. But Willa Cather, for me, in My Antonia, I was done hearing about the color of the grass and the color of the wheat and the grass and the wheat. All I remember is just there were a lot of colors and there was a lot of grass and I think there was a person named Antonia. And I've read it twice. So what I can deduce from that is while I like classics, if they are classics with long, drawn-out scenery that doesn't really, I don't know, I guess it added to it for some people, but for me, it was just, I was done and over it with it. So I didn't really like My Antonia. I won't be reading more Willa Cather because of it. So that is the book I hate. And the what am I reading now? What have I just finished up with? So within the last 2 days, I have read Who Thought This Was a Good Idea and Other Questions You Should Have Answers to When You Work in the White House by Alyssa Mastromonaco. Mastromonaco. I can't say her name. It's very long. Anyway, it is a memoir written by this woman who is one of the staffers for the Obama White House. It was really well done. I will include that in my wrap up at the half part of the month. But what I loved about this was it was just really interesting to see what goes on behind the scenes. I like memoirs where they talk about what goes on in places maybe I'm definitely not going to be able to get in and see. I like that she talked about the people she looked up to, so that was a little bit inspirational. She talked about what she learned. She wasn't afraid to share her own mistakes, and I appreciate memoirs that do that. And I really just thought it was a very interesting read. I literally read it in one evening. I snuck out of bed and stayed up way too late reading it, to be perfectly honest. But it was a good book. And yeah, that was the first one I read. I read this one yesterday when I was getting my hair cut and colored. So if you like it. This is called Embroideries, and it is by Marjane Satrapi. Satrapi. I need to do better at checking this out. Anyway, she is an Iranian author, illustrator. This is a graphic memoir, so you can kind of see the illustrations. And it's just a very short story about a woman talking with her other female family members that are older about the experience of being a woman, especially in Iran and back, 20, 30, 40, 50 years in the past. I don't want to tell you what embroideries means because I was shocked when I found out, and I think that is essential to the book, but it does come up later because I remember picking this up at the library because I just liked the cover, and I thought, and I looked and it had an author from Iran, and I thought, that's pretty good. I've been trying to do more of that, and I've been loving graphic memoirs, so that's another thing I've been enjoying. But yeah, Embroideries, There were some very funny lines in here, very racy things. If you don't like that, be aware of that. But I thought it was really interesting retelling, not retelling, but telling of the female experience in a different part of time in the world than I have. So again, it made me appreciate being a woman. So that is that. And then I just picked up, I only got to read like 3 pages of it yesterday. It's Dragonfly and Amber this is the second Outlander book. I got distracted with children, so that is the thing that I'm reading currently. So from that, I can tell that I like historical fiction, and I'm not afraid of a little raunch, and I like good characters with back and forth. So that is my what should I read next questions. If you do this tag, please link your video down below as well, because I would love to see other people do this so I can recommend things to them. But again, feel free to give me as many recommendations as you would like in the comments, because this is fun. So I will talk to you all later. Bye.